morning, Andy.
Good morning, human.
You got a joke for the kids today?
Yep. Kids, what does Andy wear when he's making banana bread?
What?
An apron.
Do you have another one?
Sure. What do bananas say when they answer the phone?
What do bananas say when they answer the phone?
Yellow.
Well, Andy, are you ready to start this morning?
Yeah, I suppose. But hey, first, do you want to hear a nursery rhyme?
Okay, that's random.
I'm random.
True enough. Okay, go ahead. Keep it brief.
You're telling me to keep it brief?
Andy.
All right. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water.
And
What?
well, what comes next?
How should I know? Did I say Jack and Jill and Andy went up the hill? I assume they came back down the other side.
Well, why do you assume that?
Well, they didn't come back down where I was standing.
So you were there.
Of course. I only report the news I know is true. In other news, the Queen ate bacon and eggs this morning.
Wait a minute. How do you know that?
I was there, of course.
You were at Buckingham Palace today?
I was.
I happen to know that you were right here today, not someplace else.
I can prove I was someplace else.
Go ahead.
Was I in Paris?
Nope.
Was I in Tokyo?
No.
Florida?
Nope.
No, so if I wasn't in Paris and I wasn't in Tokyo and I wasn't in Florida, you must agree that I was someplace else. Right?
Yep, sure.
The Queen ate bacon and eggs this morning.
Uh-huh. Well, Andy, how about we get started and tell the Bible story today?
Okie doke.
You know, my story today, it's about a leader and a group of people who had great faith. Do you remember what faith is?
Yeah, faith is kind of like trusting God even when you don't see what He's doing.
Yeah, that's right. Faith is kind of like following along behind God and sometimes not being able to see exactly where you're going, but you go anyway and you trust Him to lead you, right?
Right. So the people in today's story had faith?
They sure did. These people, they were called the Israelites, and our story takes place just after they had been miraculously freed from several hundred years of slavery to another group of people called the Egyptians.
How'd they get free?
Well, that's another story for another time, but once they were free, they crossed over into the land that God had promised them, and they still had a bunch of...
Bananas. A bunch of bananas?
No, of course not. They had a bunch of problems.
Oh.
Yeah. See, the land that they had traveled to and that God had promised to give them, there were people living there.
Oh dear.
Yeah, people who, they didn't love God and...
What? Now hang on. I thought you said God promised them this land.
Well, He did, but, you know, just because God promises us something doesn't mean that we can always just walk in and set up our tents without any difficulty, right? In fact, Andy, God often uses very difficult things to teach us important lessons, and that's certainly what He did in this case for the Israelites.
Okay, so they arrive in the land, and surprise, there are people there. So what did they do?
Well, one of the first places they came to was a city called Jericho. Now, cities in the Bible were not quite like cities today. In fact, they were quite a bit smaller than most cities, and they usually had walls built all the way around the outside. So, like big, thick walls, like 26 feet or something like that, right? So, the only place you could get in was a gate at the very front, right? And as you can imagine, people of Jericho, well, they weren't really interested in moving out, and they certainly weren't interested in letting the Israelites in.
So what did they do?
Well, God gave their leader, Joshua, a great plan to conquer or take over the city of Jericho. But I've got to warn you, the plan God gave them,
Yeah?
well, it sounded a bit crazy.
I'm starting to think God mostly lurks with crazy plans.
Yeah, I think you're right on there, Andy.
So how crazy was it? Did he tell them to use catapults and launch rotten eggs over the walls?
No, I mean, no. He didn't tell them to launch rotten eggs. He told them to
Send dogs with fleas?
no.
Send cats?
Cats with fleas?
No, just cats. To sit and stare at them moodily.
No, Andy, he didn't tell them to send cats. God told them to
Sit outside the gate and play kazoos. What? Kazoos.
no.
Harmonicas?
Andy, no.
Bagpipes.
Andy,
That would sure drive me out.
Andy, bagpipes weren't even invented yet.
Really?
Yeah, really. Anyway, no. It was none of those things. But you are getting warmer.
Yeah?
God told their leader, Joshua, to get the priests to walk around the city once every day for 6 days, blowing their horns.
That's it?
Well, yeah, that's the first part of the plan.
That is an unusual plan.
Yeah, I told you, it seemed a bit crazy.
I think I'd be a little insulted if I was that musician. Hey, you guys who lead worship, do you think you could go play your instruments while you walk around this city? That'll drive the people out for sure.
Well, that wasn't really what God was up to, Andy.
No?
No, it wasn't about the sound. It was about marching around the city, worshiping God, claiming the territory for his people, Israel.
No. Well, I don't know. I'd still be offended, I think.
So anyway, the priests, they led the people, and that's what they did for 6 days. They marched around and blew their horns once every day. But on the 7th day, God gave them a bit of a different plan. He said, okay, march around 7 times today, blowing your horns. And then, priests, give a loud blast on your horn. And when the priests did that, the people were to shout, give a loud shout, and the walls would come down.
So give a loud shout and the walls will come down.
That's what God told them to do. Yep.
Let me try. Ah!
Nope.
Did I?
Nope.
Spoil sport.
So, on the 7th day, the priests and the army following them got up early and began marching. And this time they had 7 laps to do, right? So they marched and they blew their horns 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4.
We get it.
And then the 7th time, when the priest sounded that long trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the city.
And the wall collapsed.
And the wall collapsed. It sure did. The people of Israel were able to easily take the city. And the people of Jericho learned that the God of Israel was the most powerful God in the universe. And it all started, Andy, with some people believing in a crazy plan. That seemed pretty impossible.
That plan was pretty crazy.
It was, and it required the people to have a lot of trust and faith in God, didn't it?
Yeah.
To follow him even before they could see the end of the story. Do you think some of them probably doubted that the wall would come down?
Well, I know even I would have trouble believing that some shouting and yelling could tear down a wall.
Yeah, and you know, Andy, I would too. I really would. And sometimes we can't see what God is doing. Sometimes we're just following behind and feeling a little bit confused about what's going on.
That's the truth.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to trust God when it seems like he's leading us down a road that's difficult to travel.
Lots of bumps.
Yes, Andy.
Lots of potholes.
Yes, Andy.
Lots of construction signs.
Yes, Andy. Lots of challenges. And sometimes in life we feel like God allows us to experience things that just make us frustrated or angry or sad. And it just feels like we're trusting, but the problems are still there.
Just like the Israelites.
Yes. Remember, they walked around the wall for 6 days and nothing happened. But they kept at it. And do you think they were glad they did in the end?
I would say so.
Right. In life, we will all come up against Jerichos.
I thought you said the walls of Jericho fell down.
No, Andy, I mean that metaphorically.
Meta who?
What I mean is we won't actually come up against physical walls most of the time, but sometimes in life we're going to feel like we just have trouble after trouble. But if we continue to just put one foot in front of the other,
Sometimes literally.
sometimes literally, yes, just like the people of Israel. And if we continue to do that and trust God and have faith that he is using all of these challenges to help us become even greater Christians, then we'll be okay in the end. And we'll look back and think, wow, isn't it amazing what God did? So even when it seems like something bad is happening, we can always trust in God, right?
Right.
Do you know that there's a Bible verse that it sums up our story pretty well today?
What verse is that?
Well, it's found in Romans, and it says, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. So what it's saying is, even when it seems like bad or frustrating or scary things are happening in our lives or in our world, we can remember that God can use those things, and not only can, he will use those things for our good in the end.
Even when someone is mean to me?
Yeah, Andy, God will work it for good.
Even when things are happening that make me feel kind of scared?
Yeah, Andy, God will work it for good.
Even if I've got trouble in my family?
God will work it for good.
So even if I can't figure out exactly what God is doing,
you can always trust that following him is the best plan. And he'll always work it out for you if you continue to trust and have faith, just like the people of Israel did when they came up against Jericho. You can never, ever lose if you trust God.
Thanks, human.
Anytime, Andy. Well, kids, we've got to head out for today, and thanks for joining us for another Bible story. Andy, did you have any other news you wanted to report?
Did you know the Queen had spaghetti and meatballs for supper?
Oh, Andy.
See you later,